Good evening, everyone. It's Paul Kagabine with the Garland County Library, and I'm here to introduce yet another program in the Know It to Grow It series hosted by the Master Gardeners. One of my favorite series to facilitate here at the library. It's been going on for a long time, and we've kind of come full circle. We had one of the first virtual programs we did was last year's Christmas bird count, featuring our special guest, Jerry Butler, who we'll introduce soon. And a full year has passed, and we're ready to talk about another Christmas bird count. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce the chairwoman of the Know It to Grow It committee. And if you've watched any of these programs, you recognize her, Judy Dare. She has a few words to say. So welcome, Judy. Judy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Anyway, hi everybody. I really want to welcome you all to the last Know It to Grow It of the year. It's hard to believe that a new year is on us. And before I go any further, I'd like to congratulate the Garland County Library for their recent Friend of the Master Gardener Award. It's an award that we give at Garland County and also goes to state. And they are in so many ways a friend of us, and this is a well-deserved reward, so congratulations. Now, Know It to Grow It went virtual last November, and to date we've had over 3,300 viewers. This is the anniversary of me co-hosting, and I actually introduced last year's speaker at this time, so it's kind of kismet. Thank you for your loyalty, and it's always a pleasure to be here. We have some great presenters lined up for the 2022 season, and please remember that Know It to Grow It's going to be on the third Wednesday of the month. Next month, Virginia McDaniel with the Forest Service will be talking about the woodland restoration in the Ouachita Mountains. This started out as a program to save an endangered woodpecker and has gone on for 3 decades. So this should be very interesting, and Virginia is a great speaker. Now, Paul's going to tell you all a little bit about a raffle that's coming up, but please remember to everybody send a question or a comment to us, and you'll be entered into the special raffle. And we will also have our Know It to Grow It gift bags ready for you at the library tomorrow after 10. So tonight we have Jerry Butler, who is the chairman of the Garland County Audubon Society, and a special guest, Nathan Carlton, to talk about the Christmas bird count. And Paul is going to tell you how to access those forms and how you can participate using them.
Yes, I'm going to be posting here in just a moment a link to the Christmas bird count forms, as well as Nathan's email address. I'll be putting that in the comments. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please follow those instructions that you'll be hearing this evening from Mr. Butler and Nathan, our special guest. And we also have a special announcement to make. One randomly selected viewer who comments or asks a question tonight will win a $50 gift card to Songbird Central over in the Cornerstone Shopping Center here in Hot Springs. So all you have to do to enter is, while you're watching live tonight, ask a question or just leave a comment saying hello or talking about your participation in the Christmas bird count or just bird watching in the past, and you will be entered to win a $50 gift card to Songbird Central over in Cornerstone here in Hot Springs.
If you've never been to that store, it's addicting. So I hope you win the door prize. Now, Jerry is a regular guest on the library's A Bird and a Book series, and he's a returning guest on Know It to Grow It. Nathan is the Natural Resource Manager for Hot Springs National Park. Now, Jerry says this bird count this year is very important for many reasons, so please participate if you can. And I am pleased to announce Jerry Butler and Nathan Carlton.
Judy, it's a delight to be here, and this is indeed an important year for us to be counting birds. I'll explain a little bit more about that now, but as by way of introduction, I'd like to start with this little PowerPoint for the Garland County Arkansas Know It to Grow It program. The Christmas Bird Count is a citizen science program for birders of all levels. It helps if you're an experienced birder and can recognize birds, but you don't have to be. The more important thing is that we have a lot of eyes. The more people we have looking for birds, the more we're going to see and the more we're going to count. And this is not just a project for fun, it has some scientific implications. And last year, we noticed that our birds declined from the year before. And this year, we suspect because of some other factors, weather changes and that heavy snow we had last February, that we might see drastic changes, but nobody knows, nor will they know until after we do this bird count next year. So I certainly hope you will become involved. And to give you a little history about the Christmas bird count, I'm going to ask Paul to show you a short YouTube video that tells us a little bit about the history of the count and what it's all about. Okay, Paul, so you can start that now.
The Christmas bird count was started in 1900 as an alternative activity to overhunting. There was an activity called the side hunt that was done during the holiday period, which really epitomized the overharvest of wildlife. In the latter half of the 1800s, many populations of birds were in decline, especially colonial nesting seabirds and egrets and herons. Feathers and plumes are very much in vogue, both on women's hats and also in other accoutrements of fashion. Not only were individual feathers and plumes used, but oftentimes even whole birds were seen on hats. Literally entire breeding colonies were being extirpated in a given season by the feather hunters. The growing conservation awareness at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s grabbed onto the egrets as the poster child of these birds in decline, and the egret became the symbol of the fledgling Audubon societies at the time. Frank Chapman, who was an ornithologist at the American Museum of Natural History, was among many people who were realizing that conservation was necessary, and he proposed the idea of doing a Christmas bird census rather than a holiday bird hunt. That first year, there were counts done in 25 locations by 27 people across the continent, actually, and it's been done every year since 1900. My name is Jeff LeBaron. I'm director of the Christmas Bird Count for National Audubon Society. I've always loved birds. Birds actually gave me the ability to realize that you can engage other people in the environment because they're so captivating. They're beautiful, they're fascinating, they do amazing things, and there are lots of different kinds of them. And with a little bit of effort, you can actually have a very up close and personal encounter with birds. Literally every human being on the face of the earth on any given day can go out and see a bird. And I don't think there's any other kind of animal or wildlife that you can say that about. In the present day, the Christmas bird count has grown tremendously. We now have over 60,000 observers out in over 2,200 locations across the hemisphere. One of the important things that the Christmas bird count data set enables us as scientists to do is to answer the popular question that we get all the time: how are the birds doing? It's a complicated question, really, because some birds are actually doing very well, while many groups are actually doing very poorly. Another really important thing that we've learned from the Christmas bird count data set is how are birds responding to changing winter conditions, early winter conditions. We've learned in the Birds and Climate Change report that a number of species have actually significantly changed the center of their abundance as seen during the Christmas bird count. And over 60 of them actually have shifted their range more than 100 miles northward in the last 50 years.
All right, from that video, you can see that the Christmas bird count is a national thing, but it also has a kind of local aspect. And here in our area, if you're going to be doing the Christmas bird count, I have some tips for you. One thing is try using some binoculars. If you have binoculars, you can take them. If you don't, you don't have to have them, but they'll be a great help. Another big help would be to have a field guide. If you're will help you recognize birds. Even if you know the birds well, you need still to carry a field guide, because it'll tell you whether the bird is here at the season you're looking for it, and it'll tell you about the habitat where you might find it. And if you're going to do a Christmas bird count, after you find out where you're going to be doing it, I suggest you do a little practice run, that you go to that area, if it's your backyard, or even if it's a park here in town or some other place, that you go through and you kind of get an idea of the places where you're apt to see birds. And every year I've done more than 30 Christmas bird counts, and I've almost always spend a little time before the actual day of the count in those areas. And then, of course, I also suggest that you carry your paper list where you can write down what you see, and then later you can transfer that data to the forms that Nathan will be telling you about. There are 3 count circles in our area. One of them is the Hot Springs Village count, and that was actually done yesterday. And the Hot Springs count has probably been done more systematically than the other 2 in our count, and they have a big participation from the village people. And then the Arkadelphia count is overseen by Glenn Good, and I have Glenn's phone number there, and that'll be done this coming Saturday. If you want to go count in Arkadelphia, then contact Glenn, and he can help you. One of the great things about that Arkadelphia count is that sometimes down there they see the sandhill cranes, and maybe you have a chance to see them. And then the count that's going to be done by the National Park Service is on this coming Sunday. Now, there are 23 other counts that are going on in the state of Arkansas, and you can check the Audubon Christmas bird count website for the dates and the contacts if you're interested in going to Little Rock or South Arkansas or up near Jonesboro where they're having accounts. But right now, I'd like for you to meet our guest is Nathan Charlton. He's already been introduced. Nathan's been in our area of this for the 3 years, and I think we can introduce him now. There we go. Nathan, good to have you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you to the Garland County Library for facilitating this. And to introduce myself, my name is Nathan Charlton. I'm the physical scientist and natural resource program manager for Hot Springs National Park. And this year, for my 3rd year now, I'm coordinating the Christmas bird count for Hot Springs National Park, which is a 15-mile diameter circle survey area, kind of centered around the city of Hot Springs. I've been working with Jerry Butler for a few years now to coordinate this and get people signed up and find participants and encourage people to either bird from their home. If you have a feeder at home, that's great. If you're new to birding, you can pal up and partner up with an experienced birder that we can help coordinate. Or if you're an experienced birder, just sign up and we can assign you a section. Paul, if you could go to that survey circle, and I can show everyone where our area is. And as Jerry said, this is our 122nd annual Christmas bird count, the oldest citizen science project in the US. Thank you. And as you can see, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but the yellow area is Hot Springs National Park, which is to the north there. Our survey circle includes most of Lake Hamilton, Lake Catherine State Park, Garvin Woodland Gardens, and Hot Springs National Park, and most of the city. So if you are living in one of those sections or within this circle, and you are interested in birding or counting birds for our bird count, let me know. My email and contact number will be at the end of this presentation. Again, my name is Nathan Charlton. And we're looking for people of all experience levels just to help out. Like we said, this information goes into, we compile the information at the survey level, which goes to a regional compiler, which eventually goes to a national database, which is used to look at bird population estimates and migration patterns to see the health of different bird species and how they're doing. Last year, we had 103 species with about 8,500 individual bird counts. The year before, we had about 113 species with about 9,100 individual species counted. So it's a fun opportunity to get outside, do some hiking or some observing or just walking around. Again, if you want to just observe from your bird feeder in the backyard, that's encouraged. It all helps. So I have a handful of documents that I will send out to our participants that are signed up tomorrow. This is one of them. Paul, if you can go to the next document, I think it's the instruction page. I won't go over this in detail, but this is what will be sent to you. Our bird count, as Jerry said, is Sunday, December 19th. So this coming Sunday, it's all day, sunrise to sunset. And some people choose to owl and look for owls at night. That's encouraged as well. But I will send you this document, which gives you the exact instructions on how to count, look for, and track your bird counts. And I think we may have another document after this. Is that correct? Yes. And here's the tally sheet that we'll use to count the birds. So I'll send this to everyone that's interested, and you'll have this, and all you need is a pencil or a pen and binoculars, like Jerry talked about, the gear that you'll need, and that's all lined out in the instructions. And here's the tally sheet all ready for you. So you'll be able to use this and count the birds and then send that back to us here at Hot Springs National Park, to me, via email or mail, or you can bring it to my office in the Lamar Bathhouse on Bathhouse Row, Central Avenue. And it'll be great. We'll get that all compiled and the results will come in pretty quick.
Okay. Nathan, one thing you said that the count goes on all day of our period, but it's, you know, a person doesn't have to volunteer for that long. They could count for as little as 30 minutes.
You can count for 30 minutes or an hour or 10 hours, whatever you like, whatever you're comfortable with. It all helps. It all goes towards this citizen science project. The data all goes toward the regional compilation of all the bird counts, and we can see what's going on. It all helps, and we appreciate any help we can get. We have about 30, 40 people signed up already, and so it's a pretty good start, but we're looking for more. It is this Sunday, so it's coming up pretty quick on us. And yeah, any help is welcome.
Good, good. Now, the Audubon Society volunteers, but not all the volunteers are Audubon members, nor are all the volunteers people who are in the birding community. There are people who are master gardeners or master naturalists our people who work for the Park Service, our high school students, and there's a lot of people that goes in every walk can have, and you can do it no matter what your level. That's we want to get as broad participation as you have. And I must confess to you that the Christmas bird count is a good way to suck you in. We hope that you'll get interested by doing the Christmas bird count, and it'll become vital to you and become so important. You know, if you worked in a coal mine, a few years ago, you'd keep a close eye on the canary, because if the gas got bad in that coal mine, that canary fell over dead, you'd know you needed to do something to save your life. In the same way, our planet is covered with birds, and we need to keep our eye on the birds, keep our eyes on the canaries, and see how we can help our world and help our planet, help our environment. And so please participate if you can. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
That's very good. There's a few things I want to add as we've talked about these count circles and the areas where people are counting birds. And I've introduced Nathan. You know, the Christmas bird count is done in the winter. And last winter, we had a lot of birds that struggled in the snow. I took the picture of these, I guess they're sparrow tracks of snow on my front porch. And the birds had a hard time last winter. One particular bird, the robins, that you all know in the snow, you'll see that this robin has puffed his feathers way out. That's one of the things that birds do in winter to protect them from the winter. It sort of builds bubbles of insulation among their feathers and keeps the moisture away from their skin, and can keep them warm. Oops, I'm going the wrong way on this. This is another picture. You may not be able to see this, but there are there on this porch. This is my son's porch. These are robins that collected on his porch on the Thursday of that snowstorm. And in this picture, there are 13 robins that are there. Now they're standing up and shivering and being very still while he was out there on the porch. The next morning when he got up, those 13 robins were dead. They didn't survive the night because of the cold. And this is a picture of Cardinals and Bluebirds in the snow that my friend David Seals photographed. The Bluebirds did not fare well during the snow either. Cardinals, it's just my observation that they did a little better than the Bluebirds. And I'll talk about some indicators and problems. And that's the reason this year we need to see. I'm afraid we're going to see a drastic decline in the number of Bluebirds we count this year, but maybe we'll see a same number of Cardinals. This is a dead Bluebird that after the snows went away, I went out and to the water treatment plant where the Audubon Society has some bird houses, and we cleaned those bird houses out, and we found 13 dead Bluebirds in the bird houses out there. Sometimes there were as many as 5 or 6 that had taken refuge. Now, normally Bluebirds don't live in the nesting box during the winter, but last winter it was so cold they had taken refuge there. And this is 2 Bluebird boxes. The one on the left is in my neighbor's yard, and it has a hole in it that's the size of 1.25 inches, I think, which is the appropriate size for Bluebirds. And we didn't find any dead Bluebirds in her Bluebird box, But this bluebird box on my right is my bluebird box. I've always been pleased with this bluebird box because it's made out of sassafras wood. But I don't know whether because it was sassafras or whatever, as you can tell, the woodpeckers ate a hole in that bluebird box around the hole, made it larger. And I think maybe some flying squirrels got in there, or woodpeckers, and they made that hole larger. And when I came out this spring and checked the bluebird box, I found a dead bluebird in this particular box. So as winter comes on, let me encourage you to check your bluebird boxes before we get into the winter and make sure that hole is large. It might also help if you put some pine straw or something in that bluebird box to help insulate it a little too. And birds not only need shelter, but they need water too. This is the birds coming to my water feature. I have a bird bath in my backyard, and they were coming and flying to it. But of course, you can see there was 13 inches of snow piled up on top of this bird bath, and the water in it was frozen. And I do not know if the birds died from lack of water at my yard, but I suspect they did. I had a kind of an interesting experience just after the snow melted. I went down to downtown Hot Springs, and I saw some men who were raking leaves there in front of Bathhouse Row. And as they were raking the leaves, I asked them, had they found any dead birds? And the men that in that crew had found 4 dead birds in the leaves just right there at the Bathhouse Row. And I was worried about that because I figured that if they found 4, there were probably many more that they didn't see, that their rakes may have missed or they might not have seen. And I walked down to where the pool of hot water is, down a little farther north, and there were also some men raking and blowing leaves there. And I asked them, did they find any dead birds? And they said no. They had found no dead birds down there. And I have wondered, it's not a scientific conclusion, but I've wondered if it isn't because there was that hot water there. That hot water coming boiling out of the ground, that the birds that were used to living around there could still get a drink. And they found no dead birds. Nathan, I don't know whether that's a scientific fact, but maybe the park could keep track of that in the future and see if that's happened. We're very fortunate because there are not many communities that have a big supply of hot water around.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, birds need food. I'd encourage you to feed birds during the winter. This is actually a picture of a goldfinch at my feeder. And if you see a goldfinch during the Christmas bird count, he won't be that yellow. He'll be a little duller than that. But if you feed birds regularly and birds are in the habit of coming to your yard, be sure to put it out in the winter. They'll take advantage of it. And if you don't have a feeder, you can just scatter the food out on the ground. I suggest you use millet or sunflower seeds or safflower seeds. It's a real good general bird food that we can protect and save a few birds by our food around the house. I would also suggest that if you have grasses or fields or places around your home where the weeds grow up large, don't cut those weeds down. Let them grow and let the feed that are and the seeds that those weeds and and native plants are producing be there for the birds. Several studies have shown that houses and places where they let their grass grow tall, birds are more abundant than places where they cut the grass and weeds. So that provides both shelter and food for the birds in the winter. And then not only the common birds, a friend of mine took this picture of a dead pelican that he found frozen in Pine Bluff. And we have few enough pelicans as it is to have them die because of cold. Of course, some birds might even thrive during harsh weather. This is a red-shouldered hawk that was taken during the last winter. You can see he's in a tree. Because so many of the small songbirds are weak and are dying, it probably made easy prey for these red-shouldered hawks. And this spring and summer, I've seen many red-shouldered hawks. And I was wondering if maybe the hard winter we had last year, killing so many birds and making them weak, made it easier for the red-shouldered hawks to catch them and eat. And some birds don't seem to be quite affected by the harsh weather. Those birds that migrate and go south for harsh weather, they're particularly well. We had a lot of grackles around last year on our count and the year before on our count, and I haven't seen a reduction in them this summer. I noticed that there were some birds that adapt to the snow. This is a picture of a fox sparrow, and as I was watching the birds this summer, I saw this fox sparrow, and the fox sparrow would sort of do a little dance in the snow, and he would scooch his feet back and forth, and he could go deeper in the snow to get the seed that had fallen from my bird feeder, even though it had covered it up. And the other sparrows didn't do that. I had more fox sparrows around my feeder last winter than I've ever seen before. In fact, I've never seen them at my feeder until last winter during the snow. And then some, of course, fluff their feathers like this little wren did. And I don't know what this bird is doing. I think that's a finch, but he looks like one of those critters that I used to see on Star Trek. And that Tribbles, do you remember that episode, Nathan?
I don't think so.
Well,
it looks unusual, though.
It is unusual, but it's a bird, and it flew away after it posed like that. So if you want to read and learn more about the snow, I would encourage you to look at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I wrote an article that appeared on March the 8th, 2021, that tells about our birds and the trouble they had in the snow. And it reviews a lot of the things that I've told you here today. Birds and humans must face the elements together. And so as we walk up this planet together with the birds, then we need to take account. So remember these things this winter. Number one, help us count the birds so we know how we're doing them on December the 19th. And then throughout the rest of the winter, care for the birds in your yard and your immediate vicinity by not cutting the grass, by providing shelter, and by providing water and ways to protect the birds. Well, that's sort of the end of my part of the program. We're going to have some questions at the end, I think, maybe, but I want to wish you peace and birds, because that's the way I always close.
And I always appreciate that about you. Peace and birds. It's your catchphrase.
Awesome.
So we have a few things to go over here, and I want to encourage everyone watching live, Facebook or YouTube, send in your questions or even just comments about your experiences birding and with birds in the winter and the Christmas bird count, any of the above. And you could win a $50 gift card to Songbird Central here in Hot Springs. We'll be giving that away here in 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the program. Just depends how many questions we get. But everyone who asks a question or comments before we get to that point will be entered into that drawing. So
I'd like to make a comment. There has been so much information given during this program that I'd like to remind everybody that it is recorded. And you can go back to the Garland County Library Facebook Live page and look and see all the different forms that you need and what you need to do, or just re-listen to the program, because a lot of information comes at us and we think, yep, we're going to do it. But it does sound like we really need to be participating this year so that we know in what state we're in, because we can't do without the birds or the bees or the flowers or the trees, but that's the whole Master Gardener thing. But anyway, go ahead, Paul. Thanks.
Of course. So Mr. Butler did send me a few of his most frequently asked questions, so I'll ask a few of those to break the ice and give some folks a chance to get their own questions in. So one of those questions was, the bird count has been conducted for 120 years. How long has it been going on here in Hot Springs?
Nathan, do you know?
I don't know that exactly.
I remember about 15 years ago, or maybe it's been that long. I remember when it started, so it's no longer than that unless there was a period that I didn't know. I was asked to participate, but it wasn't very well organized. But 6 years ago, who was your predecessor?
Shelley Todd.
Yeah, Shelley Todd sort of took it under her wing, and she did really a great job. So I would say the real start of it was 6 years ago, and Shelley started it and got it underway. Now, we had a year when the government was shut down and the national park couldn't participate, and that year I took it over and I did it, but I don't think it was done as well as when Shelley was doing it, because I was just a little bit short on communication that year. And then when we had the pandemic, it slowed us down, and we've had slowdowns we had 1 year we had to cancel it because of bad weather. And but then we did it a day late, and we didn't have as good a participation. But we're developed a pretty good database, at least for the last 6 years. I think we have some pretty good numbers that allow us to make some assumptions about declines and increases and species changes in our area.
Another one of the frequently asked questions was, should I count birds that fly over my yard but don't land?
Yes, count the birds if you can see them, or even if you can hear them, you can count them. Sometimes on the Christmas bird count, we have snow geese fly over Hot Springs, and they've been counted before, and they never land around here. And you'll see vultures, both black vultures and turkey vultures flying. And also, many times people know the sound of crow. They don't see the crow, but they can hear it, and you can hear and tell whether it's 2 or 3, or you can kind of make an estimate as to how many you're hearing, or you'll hear some off to your right and some off to your left, and you can count those too, even if they don't land.
Let's see. What if I see a bird I can't identify? Do I count it?
Yes, I would encourage you to count it, even if you can't identify. You know, there are a lot. For example, there are a lot of sparrows that I can't always distinguish, and particularly if I don't get a good look at them, I can't distinguish them. But you can just report that you saw some kind of sparrow, and they're placed on the form that you can record sparrow species, or maybe you see a hawk, but you don't know what kind of hawk that is. You can say, well, I saw a hawk species, or a duck. You can report a duck species. Uh, and even if you don't know whether it's a sparrow, but you know it's a little small songbird, uh, usually on their forms, or you can write in that you saw a, a, a passerine species or a songbird species, and we can record that way. That's not as good a data as knowing the exact kind, but at least you saw it and you reported it, and it provides information for us.
You're also welcome to, if you can, take a picture, maybe with your phone, maybe with a nice camera, preferably, and send that in to us, me or Jerry or his Audubon Society members, and we can probably identify it if we have a good picture. We have all sorts of resources that we can turn to. So really, if you have the opportunity, take a picture, and that way we can ID it from there.
Yeah, that's a real good suggestion, Nathan, because we need to do that. I told them a few years ago, if you're standing at your house and you see a penguin walking by, then you need to take a picture of that, because nobody's ever seen a penguin. Or if you see an ostrich, or if you see a parrot, but you're not apt to see those birds. But if you do, be sure to take a picture of it. I recall one year I was counting birds for the village, and we came upon this farm, and out in the pasture, this man had some emus out there, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to count an emu, and I had a picture of it, and I could verify it, but we don't normally count birds that are confined or caged birds. So if you go by Tyson's chicken, you can't record 3,000 pullets in there. Don't count them. But all the other birds you see, take a picture of them if you can, or identify them the best you can.
Yeah, if you see a penguin, take a picture and call National Geographic.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah. We are getting some questions in, but there's a lot more people watching than we're getting questions. So we're literally giving away some free money here soon, to $50 gift card to Songbird Central. So
And it's a good story, y'all. I've made a comment already, but I don't get to win.
all right, so let's go to some of those viewer questions. This one's from Dean on YouTube. Naive question, but in his words, it's a naive question. But do you count bird numbers or species? And if numbers, how do you avoid counting the same bird many times?
All right, that is a problem. But in the Christmas bird count, we consider birds relatively fixed objects. Although it's true that birds fly around a lot, but if you're counting birds and you're walking, say, down the Greenway in Hot Springs as you count the birds, now you may see 2 or 3 robins at first, but as you walk down the Greenway and you get a little farther away from that, the robin you see is probably different than the one you saw before, so you'd count it. Now then, if you walked all the whole distance of the Greenway and you turned around and walked back, you wouldn't count the birds you saw walking back, unless on your way back you saw a different species than you did on the way down. You would count that one. And that's, you avoid catching that. And because the feeder counters are in locations behind their house or in their yard, it's unlikely that the birds will be counted. It's my suspicion that there are many, many more birds in our count circle than we actually see, because if it's a windy day, a lot of birds are going to be huddled up under bushes. They're not going to be flying, and we're not going to see them. The Christmas bird count is not really a population count. We're not trying to count every bird, but we're trying to count them the same way as we did last year. And we get a feel for how they are. It's sort of like taking a snapshot. You take a snapshot, you don't get everything that went on before, and not everything is seen in that snapshot. And so you count as many as you can. If you can't count them, then next year you're not going to be able to count them either. And it still gives you a good scientific information.
Question from Susan, and Susan, I am going to put the link there in the comments, but her question was, where do we send the results from our bird count on Sunday?
You can send those to the Hot Springs National Park, care of Nathan Charlton. I'm going to provide my email and my phone number. You can mail them into the park, and address it Christmas bird count or to me with my name on top. Or you can bring them into me if you prefer, or I'm happy to meet you somewhere in the park along Central Avenue or wherever to get the paper copy. But really the easiest, best way is to email them to me, which to my email, which I think you're going to provide there at the end. It's just my full name, Nathan_Charlton at nps.gov, G-O-V. And that way I can get them all in one place and compile them on our end, and then we'll send the results in later to the regional compiler. But yeah, that's as easy as getting it into me physically, email, or by snail mail.
Question from Ashley on Facebook. What are the most common types of birds that you see in the area this time of year?
Well, usually the most common birds we see are the juncos, the dark-eyed junco. It's a little small gray bird with a dark head. That's sometimes the most common bird. Crows are sometimes the most common bird. A few years ago, the most common bird they saw, or at least they saw the most of that bird, was the coots, the American coot out in the village, but we didn't see hardly any here in Hot Springs. And the white-throated sparrow is very common. Nathan, do you remember what was the most common last year? Starlings is usually pretty high.
Titmouse.
Titmouse. And
Cardinals.
of course, cardinals are almost on everybody's list. Mm-hmm. And mockingbirds are on almost everybody's list. Actually, there's about 30 birds. If you learn the 30 most common birds, you'd be able to identify most of the birds you see. And beyond those 30, there are very few. I know Nathan said we had more than 100 species sim, but 90% of the birds are in the 30. And I think I have a list of common birds seen, don't I? Paul?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was the most common. Actually, yes, you do. I'll share that in the comments as well. There's a list of the most common birds seen, and in that same PDF, it looks like all of the birds that have been cited.
Yeah.
And I think I've already shared that in the comments. So just scroll a little bit, and you'll be able to find that.
Okay.
All right. Final call for new entries. We're going to give out a $50 Songbird Central gift card here after we get through these last couple questions. So if you just comment even a hello, you'll be entered into the drawing. Joanne says, thanks, Jerry and Nathan. Excited that many are registered for the bird count. What if I see a large group of birds but can't count them before they fly off?
Yeah, that's hard. Usually what you try to do is get a visual image of how many birds are in a group. Say maybe you can't count them one at a time, but you could count and you get, say, 10. So then count by 10. Or you can count by 15, whatever number works for you. You can count that and figure it up later. One time I was on a Christmas bird count and I had a long stream of red-winged blackbirds that were flying by me. Well, so what I did, they were all going one direction. And so I counted about as many as I could, and I followed them from the time they came into my view till the time they went out. And I measured that, and then say it took them 12 seconds. So then I sort of kept a count of the birds as they flew by me, and then multiplied that, and you come up with some big numbers of flocks of 3,000 and 10,000 that way, but that's about as good a way to have it. Another way is if you have a camera, you can take a picture. If you see a big group of geese, say, fly over, you can take a picture and then you can count from your photographs. But a large number of birds, it's hard to make those estimates. And you have to convince yourself that they're just estimates, but do the best you can.
And we have a wonderful comment from Bob here on YouTube. As a master naturalist, I am always impressed with the quality of programming and depth of information provided by the library and the master gardeners. Keep it up. We plan to. And then he has a question. Are there special instructions for those that wish to count the birds at their feeders?
Well, some of those are included in the instruction document that I'm going to provide to all the participants, but not really. It's just to kind of sit and be comfortable at your home, your backyard, and just if you have a camera, again, take pictures if you're not sure what birds are coming to your feeder. But no, there's not really any special instructions. It's just kind of to be there and be present and to keep a good count.
Yeah. The only thing is, of course, when you do that, then you need to submit your address so they'll know where that is, and that make sure that your address is inside the count circle.
Yep, just make sure that your home address is within that 15-mile diameter survey circle that we're going to provide to all the participants so they can double check. If you're not sure if you're in the circle or not, maybe you're around the edge, feel free to send me your address or Jerry, and we can look that up for you and make sure that it does fall within our survey area.
And if you wanted to count at a home and you're not in the count circle, I would encourage you to go visit a friend that day and count at their house, someone who lives inside the count circle, and could interest them in birds. I know a friend who always goes to his grandchildren's house, and he counts from the grandchildren's house, and he's got the children interested in birds because they help him count, and they provide an extra set of eyes. And you'll be surprised if you go out with a child and you think you're a good birder. Man, a little bitty kid can point out birds that you never will see, and they'll ask you, so you can do that.
And Judy, can you hear us? You're frozen on our end. At least your picture. All right, we might have lost Judy, but there was a question I had thought of during your slideshow. You talked about the importance, Mr. Butler, of proper feeding and housing for birds in the winter, and also the water. And you mentioned how your theory on the hot water downtown, how that might have helped protect the birds. What advice would you give to someone to provide hot water, if they don't have that luxury of living next to the national park?
You can, and what I did later in the snow season, you can cast the ice out of your feeder, and you can put some warm water in there, and it will last for a little while. Of course, if it stays cold, it soon freezes. Another thing you can do is train a light bulb on your water, and that water will keep it from freezing, and that helps. Another thing you can do, if you can put a little circulation pump on your water feature, that keeps the water from freezing quite so quickly. And you can do those things, but it's a task. Some people just leave a little water dripping on an outside faucet. If you keep it dripping, it's not going to freeze up. You put a pan under it. It can drip there, and it'll be cold, but the birds can like it. Birds normally without water will eat snow, and that's how birds in northern areas survive and get hydrated. But some of the birds, our southern birds, they're not biologically equipped to warm the snow enough, and if they eat the snow, they're fit for it, and they die because of it. They can eat it, and I've seen birds eating snow, and I think even some of those pictures that I showed you earlier, there's a cardinal that's got some snow. It looks like he was eating it in his mouth. So those would be my suggestions about water.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Got a comment from Susan. You can wrap heat tape around a container of water to keep it from freezing.
That's good. A good suggestion. Thank you very much for suggesting that.
Welcome back, Judy. This is
Hey,
fun.
you were frozen to me and I was frozen to you, so frozen in time. Listen, sorry about that. I didn't mean to just be sitting there looking like I wasn't saying anything because I was talking a mile a minute.
Really?
Yes, I was afraid you weren't. So all I want to say is Garland County Master Gardeners wishes you a very happy holiday season and a really healthy new year. And join us next year for these great programs. And I thank everybody for tonight's program. I learned a whole bunch. And please remember that Garland County Library is doing a drive for all different kind of products, non-perishable foods, hygiene products, all that. That will be over on December 17th. And they're also doing something very cool for seniors. Please write a Christmas card or multiple Christmas cards. They can be generic. Just say something about your Christmas as a child. Wish them a Merry Christmas. I learned to tell time as a kid because my parents said, do not get up before the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 6. So please participate in those programs for the library because this is what makes them the Garland County Master Gardener Friend of the Year. So thank you. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Well, thank you, Judy. And yeah, you're stealing all my information, all the propaganda I was going to share, so I don't have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. No, appreciate you.
Since you're sharing some propaganda, I want to encourage people to come to the library and see the master naturalists have built a garden-like place that you can view from sit in the library and see the natural plants. And they've got a bird bath out there, and we're going to be adding bird feed out there. And if you want to come count birds at the library, you can do that too. But they're not open, I don't think, on the 19th.
All right, and we do have a winner in our drawing. Our randomly selected a winner. Drum roll, please. Yeah, there we go. Good enough. Our winner is Joanne over on Facebook.
Awesome.
Thank you, Joanne. You have won a $50 Songbird Central gift card. So you can come to the library anytime when we're open and claim that.
And don't forget the Note to Grow It gift bags. Do we have 3?
Yes, we do.
Good.
Let's see. Let me do another drawing for those. And while I'm selecting 3 other winners, do any of your 3 organizations have anything coming up that you would like to share? I want to give each of you an opportunity.
No, just the bird count for me is the big thing in December.
Well, I would encourage people to come to any of the Audubon meetings. We meet on the second Thursday of each month. Our next meeting, we're going to be hearing from the Nature Conservancy people, and we're going to be learning about glades, and I'm anxious to have that. And then also coming up in February, if you like the summer Christmas bird count, we have the great backyard bird count in February, which gets the early migrating birds, and you can participate in that, and all the field trips that the Audubon Society takes, usually have a field trip each month. I'm not sure where the field trip is this coming month, but that's posted on the, you can look under Garland County Birds and find our Garland County Audubon Society.
I've already said my piece. I don't know what I said earlier when I was frozen, but we're just proud to be sponsored with the library. We do a lot of projects around town. The Master Gardeners are a great group of people. I've learned a lot. You don't have to dig in the dirt to be a Master Gardener, so think about joining. And please keep watching Know It to Grow It. Our outreach is unbelievable, and the knowledge I've gotten through these programs has just been unbelievable. Yeah, I said unbelievable before, but really, truly wonderful. So thanks for joining, and like I said, happy holidays. Paul?
Yes, right back at you. And Sheila, Susan, and Bob, all from YouTube. You have won some small gift bags provided by Judy here with the Master Gardeners. You can come claim those at the library. And then Joanne, you've won our grand prize, the gift card to Songbird Central. So enjoy that.
Yeah.
And thank you, all three of you, for being part of this program. Wonderful, wonderful and informative. And everyone who watched live, appreciate you. And if you tuned in late or you want to share this, please do. The video is recorded, and you can watch it a year from now. Even last year's bird count program is still posted, but this one's the up-to-date one. So you can share this information, and even once the Christmas bird count is over, I think Mr. Butler shared some very valuable information about protecting birds in the winter. So this is on Facebook and YouTube in our playlist archives. So happy holidays to everyone, all three of you and all of our viewers. And until next time, what do you always say, Mr. Butler?
Peace and birds.
Peace and birds.
Take care.
Thank you.